In 1994, Neversoft was founded by ex-Malibu Comics employees who specialized in toys, but chose to focus on video games. Their first project was a Sega Mega Drive title which they put 5 months into, but was canned after Sega put extra focus on the upcoming Saturn. They eventually released Skeleton Warriors based on the animated TV show of the same name in 1996, and the PlayStation port of MDK. But by 1998, they were on the brink of closure after a lot of other projects cancelled, including Ghost Rider and Sony published Big Guns. Fortunately, they got a lifeline from Activision, who were only half an hour away. They gave Neversoft the task of basically finishing one of their bigger projects after multiple delays and money invested, including actor Bruce Willis as a sidekick, Apocalypse. After 9 months using the same gameplay concepts as Big Guns, using the action button to fire in different directions, and making Bruce Willis the star of the game, they released it for the PlayStation the same year, and Activision let them do whatever they want for their next project. By the late 90s, skateboarding was slowly on the rise again thanks to X Games and street skating after failing as quickly as it rose in the 80s. There were video games to capitalize at the time, including California Games, Skate or Die, and 720 Degrees, but they weren't exactly on the levels of some of the best games on their respective consoles. This time, the 6th generation of consoles were transitioning into 3D, providing more opportunities for immersive gameplay. Neversoft weren't the first, with Sega releasing an arcade title called Top Skater in 1997, which had a skateboard-sized controller. Back then, this game was in a bowling alley a few minutes away from the Neversoft office, and the staff would play it every time they went bowling there. According to Chris Rolsch, who joined Neversoft as a person who knew a fair bit about skating, the first concept was basically a recreation of Top Skater for home consoles. But with his influence, they opted for open areas instead. And if they were going down a hill like Mall and Downhill Jam, they're not stuck to a rail, you can free roam anywhere you want. Neversoft co-founder Joel Jewett also built a ramp in his backyard. He took the team weekly trips to skate parks and encouraged them to skate around the offices, making sure they all knew how to skate and immerse themselves into that culture. Eventually, by a third into development, everybody was on the same page on what kind of game it was going to be. Using the same game engine for Apocalypse, the first demo Neversoft pitched to Activision was Bruce Willis holding a machine gun and skating around. They loved the idea, but they recommend a pro skater to endorse the game and improve its chances commercially. And who better than Tony Hawk? Even before the game existed, Tony Hawk was and still is considered one of the greatest and most popular vert skaters of all time. If you don't know who he is, why are you even watching this video? He was also a fan of gaming, with an arcade machine always nearby every skate park he went to growing up. In fact, while Neversoft were working on this demo, Hawk was also pitching video game ideas with a PC developer to no success, believing that skateboarding would never translate to fun video games. Until he got in contact with Activision and Neversoft. He went into the first meeting in his t-shirt, cargo shorts, and skate shoes surrounded by men in suits, first going through the financial reports bored out of his mind. And then he saw the demo with Bruce Willis on the board and was hooked. Despite the lack of moves, it had the most intuitive controls out of all the skating concepts pitched by other developers, and signed up with Neversoft almost immediately after that. And this was more than just a name to improve the sales. Tony also played a huge role as consultant during development. As it progressed, every couple of weeks, Neversoft sent a prototype to Tony so he can provide feedback on certain tricks, level design, goal type, things like that, and even perform the motion capture for some of the moves. Although according to the developers, they never even used what they gathered, claiming it was mostly a marketing tool to say, hey, look at Tony Hawk getting involved with the game. Now, as I just said, Tony did a lot more for it than simply wearing a skin-tight suit. It was made with game developers and pro skaters intertwining to make what they thought was the most solid skating experience in video game form possible. Tony Hawk's expectation come release was that it would be successful, aiming for the hardcore skating audience. Now, they were glad there was a game that would capture the rise of skating in the late 90s with lots of tricks and familiar environments. Well, it did, and then some. Throughout development, Tony also sent prototype copies to other pro skaters to get their impressions, something he probably wouldn't have been allowed to do, but this got everybody talking, with Hawk overhearing conversations between skaters talking about the game. Have you played the game? And this was before the game was officially released. And on top of all that, it coincided with Tony Hawk landing the 900 at the 99 X Games after 11 attempts. Considered one of the greatest moments for skateboarding, bringing the sport to another dimension, for their upcoming game, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was released for the PlayStation on September 29, 1999, yeah, it's called Tony Hawk Skateboarding here in Australia, and was an instant success well beyond the skating industry. It wasn't just the best skating game ever made, but it was one of the best of that generation, full stop. Oh, have I been looking forward to this one. Now, the first Tony Hawk's Pro Skater title didn't introduce me to the series, that would be its sequel, and my attempt at skateboarding in real life is simply terrible. But with that said, for pretty much the whole of the 2000s, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Underground titles were what I put the most hours into. Even when I bought a PlayStation 3 at the turn of the decade, I still occasionally played these games. And while researching and gathering notes for this review, listening to the game's soundtrack, it took me back to that place. X Games, that 900, all the other cool extreme sports games, riding dirt bikes, these are memories that go as far as I can remember. I almost felt like crying. I'm not joking, I feel stuck in that time period and I don't want to leave it. Just, wow. The song Superman by Goldfinger, getting older all the time, feeling younger in my mind, really does ring true. And that's one thing about this game that easily holds up today. There's a good reason almost the entire soundtrack from this game is also in the 2020 remaster, because it's one of the most important aspects. I'm not going to say which songs exactly because every single one is recognizable. It has one of the greatest collections of licensed music for any video game ever. When we think of these songs, we think about this game, including me. And my taste in rock, metal, punk, alternative, honestly it all began from the Tony Hawk titles because I played them so much. Therefore it's what I listen to the most. And I bet it's the same story for a lot of you watching this video. Even John Feldman from Goldfinger couldn't believe the impact these games would have on their music, claiming at the time they were so busy on tour it was like, Superman, alright, just put this song on there, and thought nothing of it. Now it's one of their most popular songs. Basically, whether it's NTSC or Power Region where the latter has 3 songs swapped around, every time another song plays when you restart a new run, you'll think, I remember that. But enough about my perspective from the early 2000s. Let's look at this game over 2 decades later, where the last time I played this game was the Nintendo 64 version at a birthday party in 2016, and the last time before that was probably another decade earlier. The way you perform tricks is similar to a fighting game where you hold the D-pad in a certain direction and either press grind, grab, or flip at the same time. Those 3 categories of tricks are all designated to every action button, leaving you with a lot of button combinations at your disposal. You can perform multiple tricks in one combo. The longer you hold the grab, the more points you get. The shoulder buttons or steering while in the air can spin the skater, but if you land while in the middle of a trick, the board isn't pointing the right way, or lose balance while grinding, you come crashing down. And also partially inspired by another fighting game, Mortal Kombat, you also have a special meter bar where if you earn enough points, you can perform hidden special tricks that are unique for each skater and earn lots of points in one go. That might explain why there was no moveset, no edit tricks in game. Some I only found out thanks to my experience with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, since that was the one that introduced me to the franchise. It's so weird explaining how the gameplay works because growing up putting countless hours into the whole series, everything feels so second nature. I felt like I had nothing to say while recording footage for this review. It's such a flawless control scheme that even on the Nintendo 64 version, it uses the C buttons and D-pad to feel like you're playing it with a PlayStation controller. It tries to make whatever skater you choose a different experience, since completing the career mode with one skater doesn't mean you've necessarily completed the whole game, which I'll get to. On first impression it does. Stats differ between skaters since street and vert skating are 2 different disciplines, but about halfway through the career mode they eventually even up since they increase automatically. And the move variety even for specials isn't exactly diverse. Like half the skaters in this game have kickflip McTwist as a special. The skaters chosen were the cream of the crop at the time, and when they agreed to appear in the game, they were given control over their attire, boards to use, and unique special trick. To unlock everything, there's a career mode where on every level there are 5 goals to complete with a 2-minute time limit. Like collecting stars in a Mario game, you're collecting tapes, collecting highlights to send to the 411 video magazine to raise your status. And finally, every few levels, you enter competitions where the main objective is to earn as many points as possible in half the time. 3 heats and the best 2 count, although I typically end competition after the first 2 heats. It has the difficulty curve, tapes being harder to reach, increase high and pro scores, and in competitions by the time you reach Roswell, you practically need 2 perfect runs to get the gold medal. It's about seeing how quickly you can get through the game by the time the controls are permanently ingrained into your brain. It's exciting that way. Earning all the medals unlocks a Bales video, but all gold unlocks a video for the skater you just controlled. I don't know if I got all the tapes, but only the gold medals for every skater. Like, I wasn't anywhere near as good with these games as I am now, but growing up, that was one of the biggest motivators. I loved watching the extra highlights of each skater. I remember when I 100% completed the PS1 version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. From that point, nearly every time I booted up that game, I felt compelled to watch every single pro video before actually playing the game. More the reason to avoid the N64 version, which had no videos at all for understandable reasons. Today, things are different. Now I expect to clear the entire video store shelf 1 level at a time. It's really satisfying getting all 5 tapes, especially on the clock. But if I don't, even if I'm at fingertips reach, it's the worst feeling in the world. Sure, you can collect the rest on another run, but it's not the same as getting them all in one go. That would be stupid. All you think about is being the best and mastering the gameplay. There's a reason why when you go online and see all these ridiculous high score numbers, this is where it all started. But with that said, this list of challenges sound very simplistic by today's standards. I mean, apart from one unique tape, whether it's grinding tables, knocking down boxes, or destroying police cars, they're all the same. And if you're really good, you can 100% the career mode on a skater in just half an hour. It also discourages the player to explore through the entire level to complete tapes, something the rest of the series will get better at. Just something to point out, since some of these pointless spots are quite detailed, parts inspired by real-life typical spots and areas skaters love to skate. For the most part. You might think not being able to revert or manual would be a huge turn away because it's virtually impossible to explore the entire level while maintaining an endless combo, although it is a big reason you feel discouraged to explore the levels. Therefore, it's about finding the best spots to grind and point tokens in the air. If you're too used to the latter titles in the series, it will drive you nuts. But you have to understand, at that time, the developers were creating a new genre, taking a lot of gameplay tropes from other classic video games, giving the player lots of different moves to perform, only focusing on the skating aspect, and these levels and challenges are designed for these type of controls in mind. Now, what actually makes this game seriously age are those irritating issues I don't hear many people mention, like not being able to grind in certain spots. In other titles, it seemed like everything and anything can be skated on as long as you weren't upside down, for the most part, but for some reason there are a few bits in a level that appear you can grind or wall ride on, but can't. It also has weird momentum, like when you go up a hill it's like a broken motorbike engine, and to gain momentum you have to be in a straight line. And if you plan on playing the PS1 version on the PlayStation 3, word of warning, the button input delay is appallingly bad. Like almost unplayable to the point where the first time making reviews on this channel I had to turn on game mode, and it barely did anything. I was prepared to say it was a general issue that makes the whole game a huge turn away today, but after trying it on a native PS1, it was a complete non-issue in comparison, and certainly saved a few potential angry comments. But as you can see, every once in a while the stars do align. These issues might sound trivial, but they're noticeable the whole time you're playing and make the game feel more unfinished than necessary, which even then, these things give the game its own identity. It's the fact I've played it so much growing up that salvages the gameplay enough that I can still cope, and want to cope because deep down I still love it for what it is, and I'm a lot better at it now compared to when it was new. It's another one of those novelty games where you can only enjoy it today if you grew up with it the same way I did, almost like catching up with an old friend you haven't seen in ages. And understand that back then, everything Neversoft did with this game came together so well that skating guru or not, was very easy to pick up and play but hard to master, and borderline impossible to play the game basically with an endless combo. It's the level of creativity at your disposal. Everybody has their own way of playing it, and you get high levels of frustration, satisfaction, excitement, all without being too brutally hard. It basically created a new genre. And as skateboarding and other action extreme sports became legitimate talking points, other copycat titles followed suit, which were also really good games in their own right. It also elevated pro skater skill levels. Even kids who never skated knew all the tricks, no doubt influencing some of them to become future pro skaters themselves, and for Tony Hawk, this was a lot more than he could have asked for, elevating his already illustrious career and becoming a true pop culture icon. But as the series evolved into a 5 billion point combo bonanza we know today, the original is considered superficial, and for a long time the soundtrack was the only legitimate excuse to go back to it. But now that the 2020 remaster is out with all but one song taken from this game, it's no longer an excuse. I know they're two different experiences gameplay wise, and there'll always be a certain charm to playing the older one on a PlayStation 1, Dreamcast or Nintendo 64, but if you're only just getting into the series, go straight to the remaster. It has way better controls, more skaters, equipment and levels. Not to mention copies for the original game, at least here in Australia, are more expensive than the remaster. Fortunately, as you can see after 6 years of game collecting and patience, I finally have all the Tony Hawk Pro Skater titles I've always wanted. Because even if this video doesn't get the same views as an open world or racing game review, I will definitely be looking at the rest of the series. The good ones, anyway. That might be the highest score I ever got in a 1 minute window for this game specifically, but when you have Rune's Christ Air special, you can get crazy points without the need for combos. Anyway, thanks for watching ladies and gentlemen.